Welcome, everyone. I'm Megan Duffy, Education and Artist Programs Manager at IPCNY, and I'm so glad you've joined us tonight for this conversation with Queer.Archive.Work, moderated by Be Oakley of GenderFail. IPCNY's current exhibition, Unfinished New Prints 2022 Winter, was very thoughtfully selected by Queer.Archive.Work members Paul Soulellis, David Kim, and Nafis M. White. And they'll be sharing their insight tonight into the process of selecting the exhibition and their work as Queer.Archive.Work. You can see Unfinished at IPCNY's Chelsea exhibition space through March 26th. And you can visit the show virtually and explore artworks on our website, ipcny.org. Tonight's event has auto-generated captions. To turn those on, you can hit the CC button at the bottom of your screen. The talk is also being recorded and will be available in about a week or so on YouTube and linked on our website. So we can get started. I'm so excited to welcome Paul, David, and Nafis, who I had the pleasure of working with on Unfinished, as well as Be Oakley of GenderFail, a publishing, programming, and archiving platform who will be moderating the conversation tonight. We will plan to take some questions, certainly by the end, but even potentially throughout. So kind of whenever you have a question, please feel free to put that in the Q&A function, or you're welcome to contribute to the conversation in the chat. Finally, there's a short survey at the end. Thank you for doing that. It helps us to have that feedback. And to start our program tonight, our panelists will be reading the curatorial statement that they wrote about the exhibition they selected. So I will hand things over to Nafis to start that, and I will see you all at the end of the event. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. It is a pleasure to be here. And let us begin with that curatorial statement. Unfinished. New Prints 2022 Winter. Capitalism rewards perfection as defined by those in power. This is especially true in the art world, where the demand for smooth resolution and predictability creates unsustainable standards for who or what is allowed to be considered successful. Too often, artists are judged along values centered on heteronormativity and white supremacy. Easily reproducible results, collectability, exceptionalism, and the illusion of meritocracy. New Prints 2022 Winter steps away from traditions of polish and perfection by making space for incompleteness, rawness, messiness, illegibility, risk, vulnerability, nonlinearity, care, queerness, and non-normativity. Within the loose theme of Unfinished, we push up against capitalism's relentless drive towards market-based success by making way for other kinds of stories. New Prints 2022 Winter includes actual works in progress, abandoned work, failed work, and work that is simply unfinished due to the myriad aspects and conditions artists experience while living and working during crisis. The radical turbulence of racial injustice, police brutality, class inequity, global pandemic, and climate emergency.
Each artist has written a statement to accompany their work. Collectively, their language adds depth and dimension to the idea of unfinished. Words like messy, from Katie Kaplan, destabilized, from Ruvan Wijesuria, queer strength, from Sheila Golaborodko, imperfect, from Jesus Gonzalez, and Black feminine utopia, from Corinne Slade, work to expand what's here. They invite careful attention. Together, the 49 works gathered here are incomplete evidence of the ongoing labor and joy in the collective struggle that aims to push against. Benjamin Merritt's Before They're Sung, 2021, brings the, quote, endlessness of chronic illness and disability, end quote, into conversation with Mended, 2021, by Terry Shupbach Gordon, who speaks, quote, from the margins that I know to create a new definition of who is beautiful and what strength looks like from there. In writing that quote, the work here is unfinished on every possible level, end quote, out of the Dark Pall, 2021, Dan Keith Williams refers not only to the individual artist's condition, but to our quote, our collective relationship with darkness, end quote. And as Cairo Mo writes about their unreproducible lino cut, Beishe, 2021, quote, none of the previous versions can be repeated exactly, end quote, challenging fundamental assumptions about reproducibility, legibility, time, and the need to keep going anew.
Pushing against capitalism is an endless labor. There is hypothetically no end to this installation. Quoted from S. Alvarez, De Generación 2021. And there is no limit to what's possible when released from heteronormative market-based metrics of success. As we organize, make, gather, and assemble in the nonlinear, uncertain space of the unfinished, change happens, and we make way for others.
Queer.Archive.Work, Inc. is a nonprofit 501c3 library, publishing studio, and residency serving Providence, Rhode Island, and beyond. Queer.Archive.Work was incorporated in the state of Rhode Island on March 2nd, 2020. Happy 2-year anniversary, to support artists and writers with free, open access to space and resources for experimental publishing with a focus on queer practices. Queer.Archive.Work includes a non-circulating library of books, zines, tools, objects, downloadable filed, and a shared publishing studio with Bench Press, including extensive risograph, screen printing, letterpress, and other print and publishing resources and digital meeting spaces. Programming includes studio residencies, studio membership, open library hours, open studios, workshops, publishing, and online queer hangouts. Queer.Archive.Work aims to be accountable, to center marginalized voices through intersectional work, and to cultivate anti-racist, safe platforms for independent queer publishing. Welcome one, welcome all. I first just want to say, when we were planning this, Nafis, we were talking about reading this out loud, and Nafis was like, I love reading. I'm so excited. I want the biggest paragraph. And just like listening to you read, and every time you said the word, what was it? I think it was winter. It just got me every time. The way that you said winter with that little pause before that was just made my 7 o'clock hour.
I was trying to live up to Nafis's, like what Nafis, you set the standard for the reading, so I was trying.
I mean, I was savoring it because it's a mission I love. It's a mission I believe in. I'm in Congress, in conversation with people that I love. So, you know, I'm gonna put some stank on it, you know?
and I just want to talk to like the reading of that, because, you know, in our meetings, in planning this, you know, the statement really is an important aspect of the exhibition. And I was kind of, you know, thinking of it as like the 50th work in the exhibition. And also it's, you know, I just think whenever we can hear, you know, artists reading their own words, and this statement also was collectively written by all three, by David, Paul, and Nafis. And I think it's really important, especially in connection to this exhibition in particular, thinking about, you know, a curatorial statement as being a really important part of this, because sometimes, you know, when we visit exhibitions, you know, curatorial statements exist, but, you know, I think it's really important to stress that. And with that, I'm wondering if any of you could just talk to the writing of this curatorial statement and kind of what it became, just talk about the writing process. I would love to hear more because, like I said, it's next level curatorial statement writing. And I can't underline that enough, how much I love this text piece in connection to this exhibition. So any thoughts on the writing process would be great from y'all.
Thanks, P.
Yeah.
And I also just want to say thank you for doing this. for moderating this conversation. I'm really, really happy that we're doing this with you in particular. The writing of the statement, I'll start us off. There's the curatorial statement that we just read, and that's what ended up on the wall. It's what's on the website. It's kind of like the finished statement of the unfinished show. But backing up from there, there was a process that David and Nafis and I went through from the very first moment we met about this, which was to write the open call. The open call, to me, I mean, I love thinking about this as the 50th work, the curatorial statement, but actually maybe it's the 51st. I think the open call was like the 50th or the first work. Putting that out there was really important for us to set the tone, to be an invitation that went out on behalf of, I mean, we took it very seriously. Almost all the language that you see there, aside from like the artist quotes, was there in the open call. And I think we felt that this was a good moment for putting an invitation like that out there in the midst of crisis, in the middle of the pandemic. When was that? I guess it was during the summer that we wrote that. Nafis, David, I don't remember. Well, it was the middle of the pandemic.
Time is so compressed right now. It was definitely in the thick of the pandemic, which it's all a blur, obviously, but yeah, no, the call, I remember us being in kind of a flurry of a conversation, like emails and texts, and then all coming together and meeting outside in a pandemic safe way, and COVID safe, and having just a really invested conversation about the values that we wanted to embody in this call and who we wanted to reach and how we wanted to speak to this moment and the people that might be struggling and might be trying to also speak to this moment in ways that were meaningful and challenging, and how to support them and to make this call read to them in a way that would encourage them to take the risk to submit, because maybe if we didn't get the language right or the call right, they wouldn't be as inclined. I remember feeling that there was an urgency in that sense, and wanting to reach a broader audience than we would, maybe a call otherwise would.
I just want to underline something you said, like the values of the open call, or any open call, I think is important, but it also made me think of like the ethics of curation, because I think that's something that is not, I don't see, in some exhibitions, I feel like that's, something that is lacking from some, exhibitions. And I think it's obvious here and through the work that, the ethics of this curatorial process of jurying an open call was such an important aspect of this in ways that, you don't always see from juried open calls. I just wanted to throw that in there. If Nafis, if you want to add something into the pot, I just wanted to underline that from David.
Yeah, well, just thinking of the last line in the curatorial statement, change happens and we make way for others. I just thinking about like, how we were having these conversations, and we were talking about, this kind of like academic rigor and how there are these like very particular portals that are set up, to kind of, dance the dance and like, you understand the vernacular and you're like, putting yourself in this like, tightly packed box and all of this, and how to go against all that. You know what I mean? Like, how do we also support people in their, in their process, but, and honor and, give place for, kind of that liminal space, and also, does it have to be like, the framed tight that, like, what are we, really prioritizing here? Like, I wanted to, and we were talking about like, being open to, these stories, these experiences, these, ways of being, and how can we, lift up those voices. So, it was really important in that regard. Mhm.
Yeah, and also, David, you mentioned broaden the audience, and I think we were doing that with the call, like how do we speak to even more? But in a way, we were also, I think, at the same time, like trying to narrow or focus
Mhm.
that call to particular folks, maybe who have not, in that broadening, can we reach folks who maybe haven't felt empowered to enter a juried show or to
Mhm.
be in a gallery space? Is there a way of working as a printer, as an artist,
Mhm.
working with print? Is there a way to think beyond the finished product? Is there space in the art world, in a Chelsea gallery space, for something that would not be considered a finished product? And I think that's where our title came from.
Yeah.
And I remember when it came to us, we were sitting outside and we were just like, oh yeah, unfinished. It was like perfect. So.
Mhm.
No, and I think that's so important, like just this word unfinished, it really, I feel like when I was in art school, or I don't know if I've done this with any of my students, but, kind of like think about summing up your practice into one word. And I'm also just thinking about like summing up like one word from this whole process, and like unfinished seems to be like that word, which obviously makes sense because that's the title. But, it really does, speak to this, it's like, and I love, the context of using the word unfinished, and it's in such a like nurturing and caring light. Unfinished is not, it is imperfect, but it's also the imperfection is what makes it, special. And I just want to highlight, the power that this word normally doesn't have, that the agency that it has here. I also wanted to like comment on when we talked before also, you kind of floated around the idea of this potentially being like a open call where everything's accepted, but I was kind of talking to like, which seems like antithetical to something that's queer, of being juried. But I think how important that this was, that you didn't go that route. And not that we necessarily have to speak on that much, but I think it's actually really important because of the ethics of this process that this is juried. And again, this is a juried exhibition, so of course it's going to be juried, but I just love kind of thinking about, this idea of like open call, everything's accepted. And I'm actually an artist that doesn't like that very much, or I think like, think it's really important to look at work and contextualize work together. Doesn't have to necessarily be a question. I don't know, it's working through my own, I'm like thinking out loud while we're here, but yeah, I would love to also, one last thing about the jurying process, if you can talk about like your conversation with ICP and like coming to that place too, and you were talking to like kind of their openness, and really just speak to like how this was different from past open calls, if anyone wants to like kind of speak to that, and ICP's obvious willingness to be flexible in this, if anyone wants to speak to that, because I thought that was a really interesting part of talking about this exhibition.
Well, I mean, we did consider the idea of trying to have to accept all submissions, but there was just kind of logistical constraints, of space and budget, and not being able to do that just from a technical standpoint, and also from like maybe a conceptual standpoint, wanting to really prioritize work that we think had an intentionality and spoke to the call and the themes in the call, as opposed to work that maybe was submitted just because it was ready to be submitted. And of course, there's a subjectivity in that, and there's subjectivity in any kind of jurying process. So we are fully self-aware of that, and of the the fact that it's an imperfect process, no matter who is in that seat of power, as we allude to in the very first sentence. we hope that we certainly we were invested in bringing a very different dynamic to that seat of power, and a different understanding to the so-called metrics of that jurying process, and and really interrogating this idea of meritocracy, and the illusion of meritocracy. And then I think that segues into the process. We worked with IPCNY for the submission process. We asked for people to submit statements that spoke to the work, but also to why the work was made, how the work was made, the context, in a way that I don't think was so much a part of the submissions in the past, for past calls. And that was very much a part of our jurying process that informed us extensively.
I love that like language or like written statements became such an integral part of a show at the International Print Center. I mean, just to like underline that, how like cool that is, or how unique to this process that is, that the statements became almost as important as the work itself. Like without that statement to contextualize why this has to be in this exhibition, I think is so powerful to this process. And, and that's definitely something I wanted to talk about, definitely the statements, because that's like, as someone who loves words, if anyone knows GenderFail, like publishes words, we photograph 100+ page books of words, which you do too, Paul, but, yeah. But yeah, I just wanted to underline that.
The statements, the vulnerability in the statements, like the ways in which the statements, painted these vivid pictures, the way that people were so candid and so true, I mean, really vulnerable, I mean, really powerfully present, and that they could see themselves, in this exhibition in that way was just, it resonated in a real deep way, and helped us kind of bring them together, as this tapestry. It was just, informative. I love looking back, and even as you guide yourself, because people can view the exhibition through IPCNY's website and actually, toggle through and, go right up to the piece, and then you can read the statements as well. I mean, they definitely sit with me. And I also, love learning more about the work through that written element, and just adding that depth. So it was a generous offering, it's a generosity of these artists, these beautiful people who saw themselves so powerfully and were so open. I mean, it made it, a curatorial experience. It's one of the highlights for me, one of the most important shows I've been a part of for those reasons, and with David and Paul,
And B, you asked about oh, sorry, Nafis.
Go ahead.
Yeah. B, you asked about working with IPCNY. I think when we wrote the open call and we came up with the title of the show, we were kind of nervous about taking it to them and seeing what they were, how they were going to react. Like, I think in our minds, this felt, because we also, we also proposed some changes to how the application process would be for the applicants, in terms of information being collected, and we were surprised, I think, that they were so into it, which was a really pleasant surprise. I mean, they were super supportive right from the moment that we submitted everything and all the way through. And then we also proposed being involved with the installation, and Nafis was able to go down to New York and actually work on the installation.
Oh, we will definitely talk about that, because I'm very interested in that, like 1,000%. One other thing I wanted to underline, I had two thoughts. I have one back. When you like are losing a thought, I caught one in my net. The first one is, I think Yeah, this application process. Oh, I found the other one. I caught the net with the other one. Okay, first one I'll do is it's sad that you have to be surprised at an institution, not talking about ICP or IPC in particular, but just institutions, how we're just like it's so understood to be for them not to be willing for change or feedback. And I think honestly, we're in a time where it's like, if institutions aren't open to that feedback or change, like, do they need to last forever? Honestly, I'm not, even just thinking about Queer.Archive.Work too. I think one thing I love about that process, and I also have like a archiving project of my own, is that, for me, some things might not last forever. And I think that's fine. Like, also I'm technically, during this time, I'm supposed to be teaching a class, so my students are here. I was going to ask if we could change it, but I'm like, the class I'm teaching is called an ephemeral archive. Shout out to my students who are here. If you're not, I really don't care that much, so it's fine. But no, I do care. But anyway, the ephemeral aspect of things, I think is really great. Or I'm just thinking about that word ephemerality, obviously because of my class. But I really think that's appropriate. But yeah, anyway, I'm kind of rambling now, but institutions have to be versatile. Otherwise, we don't need them.
No,
Archive.Work
this
is an
is
example of that. Like you started Queer.Archive.Work. Like we don't need to deal with trash institutions anymore.
this is so important. I mean, because GenderFail and Queer.Archive.Work, or GenderFail Archive Project and Queer.Archive.Work, are not traditional archives. We're not conventional archives in any way. So just by the nature of our project and what brings us together with David and Nafis and everybody involved with the project, is a kind of stepping away from institutions and questioning always, what are the power dynamics here in starting a nonprofit, in bringing people together in space, in these publications. I know that that's something that we're trying to interrogate all the time. So yeah, honestly, there's hesitation working with an institution and bringing something like this to them, because I think, and again, this has nothing to do with IPCNY, but just
we're not trashing. That would be
the opposite. The opposite, because we didn't run away.
This. Yeah, no. This is not a IPCNY. You're doing. Yeah, you're not a call out of you, obviously. But anyway, I'm just rambling now. Continue, Paul.
Yeah. No, that was it.
I mean, just that. Yeah, we
were, I think, braced a lot of the time for refusal and rejection of the values that are causing us to take that step, that distance, that step away.
The whole once bitten, twice shy, like all of us on the screen right now have navigated plenty of the big I institutions and have maybe been traumatized by various experiences. So, certain expectations have been set, but perhaps, the fact that we were invited in the first place, IPCNY knew what they were inviting and we're open to it. So,
and the thing is, like, I'm always surprised, like, I put too much on my plate and I've never relied on institutions. So I always am just creating, publications and opportunities of my own that, I've kind of given up applying for things. I'll just take whatever comes my way or anyone that wants to work with me, otherwise I just make my own things happen. I don't know. It's just so like second nature. And anyway, I think this also like ties in again to my second net catching of, you're kind of talking about in the application process, you could kind of tell people that we're just applying for it because it was an open call. And I think that statement became that really important filter because, I think this kind of goes into like, the word capitalism is always thrown out a lot where it's like, we're anti-capitalist, but what does that mean through action? And I think the action of the way that you're kind of like that this exhibition, does that is through that application process, is that, it's not just about professionalism for your resume, the works really had to be specific to this in relation to an open call. So I just want to highlight that, that's one way I see like the criticality of capitalism and what this exhibition did to like kind of work through that and kind of own up to that. I just feel like it's right. I feel like that's thrown out a lot. Like, I think we all agree with anti-capitalism, but there's just so many contradictions to living that or being critical of capitalism. But like I know those. I not that it bugs me, but I just think, again, actions are important. So like, are we speaking through these kind of calls for a critique of capitalism, which is, setting anyone up for failure because we're so enmeshed in it. It's like we're in the muck of it, so we do what we can to work through it. But okay, I'm trailing off now. Maybe we can switch. This is a good time to switch gears to the installation process, Nafis, because I was kind of talking about when we spoke before how impressed I was with like the exhibition and the spacing, and maybe you can remember the artist's name for better than I can, obviously. But in our conversation before, I was talking about the prints of like the Black Lives Matter and other like that wall having the space for that work. If one of you can mention the name of the artist, because I don't. But anyway, talk about the curation process, and I'm really curious to hear about that.
Okay. So so first of all, yes. So the invitation to come down, come to New York and do it. And having David and Paul's blessing to go and jump in and take a look at the space. Megan was wonderful, of course, the staff, the interns, being able to pop in. And, so what I wanted to think collectively about was, not only the choreographic, not only kind of like how you enter a space and move through the space, but really like, how do you anchor a show? What are the works that are really going to hold up, a wall and really talk in dialogue to each other and then bring the conversation together, so that was something that was really exciting. Also, the work was, I lost my mind when I got there. Like, you know what I mean? Because when you see the work, on a screen, and you feel it, you're like, okay, and then you're reading the statement, you're like, damn, this person gets it. And then you get to the work in real life, in real time. And it just blows your
Go for it, Nafis.
Right. It just transcends, So I just have to say also, like, what a treat, and like what a gift. And what a sacred right, really, to be able to witness these kinds of works and then to be able to have this in a space like IPCNY and in conversation with each other at a time like this, so it was, God, I savored it, I really savored it. And then also, spent time. And then the poetics, it just kind of flowed, it just opened up, and I loved also, when you walk into the space and you see all the different elements of print, you've got screen printing on sand. You know what I mean? You have, Anukriti used cardboard, because they were thinking it was like economy of means. Like, I have to say something right now. And it was about this accumulation of materials on hand to produce something that was just so filled, so filled with emotion. So all I have to say is like, what a privilege, what a privilege. So, and let me see if I can find, because there were so many artists. We had 36 artists with 49 works. Mm-hmm. In the space, so we were kind of like, "Ooh, is it all going to fit?" And how? But my goodness, what a beautiful dance, and that everyone got the space that they deserved. So I'll try and find the artist. But right, those are very sensitive prints. That really, and even the process of the Black Lives Matter protests. That they're almost like impressionist works, almost. You know what I mean? It's like.
Mm-hmm. Right? They're super experiential, like, like viewing them, you really saw the motion, like through like a static print, which I really, and again, like I was saying with that work, like the space that was given for that too, like even in a show that, space is limited, and I think the use of space was, was really thoughtful in the exhibition. And another thing about the installation, did you refer to Paul and David a lot for this, or was this something that you kind of headed up on your own and intuitively Did you
We
like refer back to
we were
that?
getting the DMs. We were in the DMs in the
Okay,
back.
that's good. I was just
Yeah.
wondering if
Well,
Nafis was like, I got this, y'all. Y'all
well,
just sit back and see what I create. I'm just curious.
Megan guided us through this initial process of doing things remotely with this model, and like doing kind of sketching things out digitally and really guiding us with her experience, like, very kind of diplomatically, gently kind of guiding us like, yeah, that many things probably won't fit here. And, but also really doing an amazing job of creating as much space and openness for us to do what we wanted. And then Nafis really kind of towed the line, like, and went to the gallery. And I mean, it's amazing. Like, even just the virtual exploration of the gallery, there feels like there's breathing room for everything. And I can't believe that you did it. Like, we were worried that we didn't cut, like we kept too many pieces in still, because we had such a hard time kind of winnowing it down in the first place. Like, we made Megan meet us extra times because we couldn't cut enough work. That's and apologies to Megan again for that. But that was a process.
Yeah, that was a, oh yeah, Nafis,
Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to talk again about being in your DMs because Nafis was feeding us videos and like telling us about where things were going. And there was so much. At some point I just said, Nafis, I trust you. Like, just go for it.
Yeah. Thank you. Because I just, I wanted to be as communicative as possible because I value, of course,
yeah.
Opinion and, just like vibe and, and yeah, when they were like, look, like you just, so I was
well,
like,
you were there, so it was
also Nafis, we know installation, like that is your practice. I mean, not to say Paul and I don't have some experience in that arena, but come on, we know
That's true. I savored it seriously. By the way, B, you were asking about the prints, the Black Lives Matter. That was
I'll show the work.
Oh, I put it in the chat, Nafis. I put it in the chat.
Oh, you did? Oh, thank you so much. Thank you. Yeah. But those pieces, I mean, and we had decided also there were some works where it was clear, like, no, we need all of them. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like, no, we're not doing A, we're doing the, like, yeah. And this is one of those, that was really important. I mean, there's another one, another grouping, let's see here. Oh my gosh, there's such like figurative but emotional landscapes. Let me see if I can find her work really quickly in here. It's Cynthia Resendez work, which is screen printed, female forms that are, slightly abstracted in this cacophony of color. Oh yeah, there it is. Yeah, we're doing the walkthrough right there. It's on the right near the four pieces on the right of that. The four pieces on the right side.
Oh no. Okay.
Yeah, just a little bit back. Voila. That's the one.
Voila.
So, right, like thinking about like all of these, you're just like, it's like mesmerized. What I loved also was the techniques that different artists employed. Color, texture, lushness, like beauty, all of these things. And then when you go in, you're just like, oh my gosh, you're like, what are all the things going on? Like, you want to like, you're getting all these hints, you're getting all this narrative, you're bringing it together, and it was just. My goodness, I mean, what a treat. like I'm just still in awe of all of these, powerful artists and of a huge range of experience, a huge range of age, a huge range of ability. I mean, we talked about all kinds of themes in this. It just continues to, give its blessings, really, so.
That was fun to see the show like that.
Yeah, I hadn't seen the 3D view before because I went to see it in person, but yeah, it's like how I know there's a technology that's been around for a while, but like it truly is such a great tool. I mean, especially for a show like this, that obviously seeing it in person is I guess the ideal experience in theory, but yeah, what a great tool. But anyway, continue, Paul.
Oh, I was just gonna, like, building on what Nafis was saying, I personally felt challenged by this, or wanted to feel challenged by how we might stretch even the definition of what print is, or what would be considered to be in a print show. And I think that's evident in some of this work, that there are things in here that are absolutely like part of the conventions of art world printmaking, but then there are things that are not. We've got small presses in here, we've got apparel in here, we have objects and three-dimensional things and quilting and things that
And
are
print on sand.
processes that are applied in untraditional ways. And that's part of the theme as well, also, is like challenging these, like someone was referring earlier to, like putting yourself in a box in order to enter a competition, a juried show. And yes, that's part of the truth of being in a juried show, but what are some of the unboxes that we can undo? Like the boxing in of a discipline, or what the art world or a gallery defines as printmaking.
And also, too, I want to highlight, I meant to say this earlier, like location that this is in, in Chelsea or close to Chelsea, and like I'm in Chelsea too often, sometimes just go to Printed Matter, which is another, like there's very few spaces, like there's the kitchen, there's Printed Matter, and for now, this exhibition as spaces I'd want to go to in Chelsea. Otherwise, it just, it's
pretty oppressive.
It's super oppressive, and I just want to highlight that. So I think, like the location in conjunction to this exhibition is important, as place always is. And
well,
also,
it's hard.
Yeah.
Well, I was just gonna say, like there's a place for commercial galleries, like I do believe, I know you're shaking your head.
No, it's true. It's true.
No, I'm also
is
trying
such
to
an
acknowledge
extreme of that.
It is an extreme of that, but I also want to acknowledge that artists that there are various ways for artists to make a living. And
Absolutely.
if you've got your work in a gallery space and you're selling your work through a gallery, like good for you, like that's necessary. But I think that makes work like IPCNY, if you're attempting to undo those boxes and challenge those definitions, to do that in the midst of that, like of an extreme environment like Chelsea, which is defined by commercial success, I think that takes it even to like some other place.
Absolutely.
The gesture has a very different impact and different resonance because of that proximity, because of the context. Yeah.
I was just typing in the chat for anyone. Please ask questions if you would like. Like, as you kind of see, this whole presentation, I wanted to feel like organic, and that like Paul goes, besides the reading of the statement, which made sense, but Paul goes now David, now Nafis, now questions, and wanted to feel like, more conversational. So please ask any questions or comments or join the conversation through questions while we continue to talk. I just want to throw that out there. I've been enjoying this so much. Is it, just before, I want to make sure, is there anything you feel like as time is going through the quicksand of the hour, anything else you want to highlight in the exhibition, like, to speak to, like we've talked about the jurying process, the statements, curatorial, is there anything else that you feel like you want to speak to, or to make sure to talk about here? I just want to make sure that, you all are getting across, as the curators and organizers of this, everything that you want, or that's a very broad question, but there we go.
We do have a question. It's a comment though.
Oh, okay.
Oh,
I'll read it out loud, because I think in this, I don't think you can speak, like the attendees we can't video see them.
I don't think so. I don't think so.
Well, I wish anonymous attendee, I could see you, but that's okay. However, I find difficulty understanding the distinction between politics and aesthetics. I am wondering why, to me, politics have trumped aesthetics. I am gay, I support the politics, but it's different for me to consider acquiring, supporting the art and the exhibition. It's all about institutional acquisitions, so be it, but it leaves a supporter of printmaking like me out. Yes. Yeah, I guess this is like a statement comment, but yeah, any thoughts on that from any of you?
Yeah, I wish we could. I
Well,
wish we could talk. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure if we're understanding the question as it was intended exactly.
Yeah.
But the way I'm receiving it is that maybe the person asking has their own subjectivity on the aesthetics of printmaking, which is valid, and that they're not seeing the work in the show as work that they would want to purchase themselves. And so the work is, they're seeing it through a political lens only. And maybe that was more of a priority for us in the show, but I would argue that we actually see the work strongly as incredibly aesthetic, as aesthetic work in
Absolutely.
in kind of the highest sense. Not
to, oh, sorry.
I see Nafis nodding there. We saw the work as risk-taking and incredibly of incredibly high level, really. We wouldn't have considered it otherwise.
And one thing I just want to say, as someone who, I always forget, like I don't know why I always say it like this. I technically have a BFA and MFA in printmaking, like for both majors. And I think what this is also saying, it's like there's a lot of printmakers, obviously, that have a love for process and generally process only. And I feel like this question is kind of, seeing certain, seeing just, content trumping process, which I feel like is always a conversation in printmaking, or has been for as long as I've known of printmaking. And I think it's speaking to that, and I think what David was saying, and what I don't think they're necessarily at odds, or I think just because you focus on the politics or the concept of it doesn't mean that the aesthetics aren't at a similar level, I think, and especially in this exhibition, like they're hand in hand, in my opinion. Nafis, go. Yeah.
I'm into that too. For one, I come from, my uncle is Brian Shore, a very esteemed, very well respected master printmaker and painter. And I also have a master's in printmaking also, baby, I eat up process for like, just eat it up. But what I wanted to say was, the first thing that came to my mind was, but baby, did you see the show? You know what I mean? And I say that because, I had a great privilege, speaking with 3 of the artists this past week. I spoke to, Erin and Katie and Anukriti, and spoke with each of them about, the layers of litho, monoprint, like all of, all kinds of, layered, textured, process-based, and also on top of that, got something to say, so I feel it's like a veritable feast,
And I think any work that considers itself to be only process-based or more on the aesthetics, I just don't think that's possible, right? I think any work can have, I don't know, I guess there's an intentional use of politics or I really think it's the same as concept, right? I mean, I guess there's political work, or identity-based work, I think, is another way of interpreting that, right? I just think these things, you can have more focus on it, but it's always there, at least bubbling under the surface or something.
It's always there. It's always there. I mean, there is no aesthetics without politics.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Even if it's hidden or not on the surface. It's just like, yeah, it's not, I guess in some ways I
I mean,
politically.
that gets to the core of what we were saying at the very beginning in our statement. This, like, the erasure of those things is what capitalism demands. The easy, marketable, reproducible, marketable thing is the erasure of those things, right? And we were specifically asking for the messy, the individual, the unreproducible. So of course the show, the show would have work that would be pushing back against things that were high polish and process forward. And I'm someone who doesn't come from a printmaking background. So when I read aesthetic, I wasn't immediately interpreting that as process in the question.
Oh, yeah, that's very much. I knew that. I'm like, if you're talking
I was reading like,
process,
everything was like aesthetically beautiful to me that we selected. And I mean, I come from a very, fine art background, a new media background, I would say. But like, I feel, from my background, focusing too specifically on media and process actually takes away from the aesthetics in a fine art context. So that's a very different kind of cultural framing in other fine art contexts, and I think that's not something I'm accustomed to as someone who's not specifically a printmaker.
Yeah, well, and I also get tired of talking about formal elements. I mean, I'm sorry, I get bored. I'm like, but what I'm like, what is the work doing?
Who are you? Yeah.
And go all these places, but what is the work doing?
Yeah.
What do you want to say?
There's
another question.
Yeah.
Oh, I love questions. Let's go.
Hi, Erin Moore. Artist in the show, nice to have you. The question is, how did you come to the decision of the presentation of book zine work? Were there limits on audience interaction? I know this is tricky media to exhibit as opposed to print. Yeah, I will say, I can be, well, I just, zines behind, glass, like leaves a longing, let's say. Yeah, leaves a longing. So I think that's a great question. Yeah.
I'm awful. Yeah. Go Nafis. Go. No, you go.
Oh, I was just gonna say COVID, boo. That was the first thing. I'm like, you know what I mean? I was just like, also, because tactility, like I want to dive in. Like that pleases me to no end. And so, but
well, and one thing I'll say on that, hopefully, because that's a work published by Childish Books, I'm pretty sure, like one of the zines.
Yeah,
like
Childish Books. Mm-hmm.
So hopefully there's enough of a longing that, brings people to, and shout out to Childish Books. They're an incredible project, bringing into the conversation children in artist books and small presses, which is there any other press doing that at this scale and in this community? So shout out to Hannah. I am such a huge fan of Childish Books. But yeah, hopefully that longing just like extends that, interaction in a way. And maybe this is like a cop out because it is COVID and you couldn't touch it. But yeah, let's just say that the intention was for you to buy the zine. We'll say that now, but
yeah. I mean, it would be a very different show if we were able to just have like everything out, touchable, have like piles of zines or whatever. And I've been to, B, that's how you display your work when you do installations. And I think that's amazing. But I also felt, even with the restrictions, it was really important to have a small press in this show and absolutely. To take something like zine making or small press publishing, independent experimental publishing, and have that be considered in a serious, like juried, print focused institution and setting. That just felt like an important gesture in a show that was trying to challenge some of those ideas. So
well, and maybe this is just obviously my background, but small publishing has become such a important part, and the book, increasingly has become such a big part of printmaking. Like most universities now have a reso, at least at SMFA where I teach, like so many of the classes are bookmaking classes. Like it's just like, yeah, so it's good to like comment on that. not only trend, but I think people are realizing, artist books are affordable art. And I love how much of a beating a book can take, even though it's paper, books are very, very, they can take a beating, and I wrote this like manifesto a while ago, and part of my GenderFail archive project, it's like part of what this archive is like the archive of touch on an object. So like when a book has like a coffee stain, a bent page, like it refers to a body interacting with it. And I think that's like the archive that I want to have, is like an archive of like, use, is more important than, saving objects in an archive so that they go up in value. Like that's very uninteresting. It's not the reason I do an archive, is for longevity and money. Yeah.
I think that, to Paul's point also about this, these dynamic, publishing is like, I mean, if it were a different time, and also if Megan had allowed, because we were asking Megan for a lot. Probably we would have wanted to be like in touch with the publisher, and then get, just like have, just have all of it, or have as much, have a cacophony, have like a selection, because again, tactility and like, right, it's like the human index, that's created, but also like the way in which it imprints itself upon you, right? Because you're like, God, I read that thing in this space at this time, like at this exhibition, like it just all of a sudden like it's like a photograph, So, but at the least right now, what we can encourage, and encourage our audience also is, to support, these people, and to acquire those runs of zines. So
yeah, like that zine, I think it's $10. Extremely affordable, and also going to like a publisher and artist that, is worthy of your support, I mean, there's a lot of artists and publishers that are worthy of financial support, but I can't stress how much I feel also, when this kind of has to do with this show and also doesn't, I'm like, I love being a small publisher because it's very easy to feel jaded by the art world, and I really never am. Like, maybe I just surround myself with artists that always inspire me, support my work. Like, I don't know, I just like, I don't get bogged down too much in like the competition, and like, I don't know, I'm very blessed to be a small publisher. And I know so many amazing artists that, I don't know, I just like my painter friends, like the competition and the intensity is just like, I can't, it's just like that dog eat dog world. And I think that speaks to like, in a small way, like the artists in the show too, you can get a sense of that, not only community, but that sense of like art making in that way that feels, generous. And I don't know, I'm trailing, but
the exhibition is really a beautiful extension of what Queer.Archive.Work does.
Yes.
Nationally and
10,000%.
It is just, it really is, like generative. I think the artists are very generous. I think the processes are, very explored, very considered, very intentional. And, that, it's kind of like, looking at someone's work and being able to tell kind of who that person is, to have Queer.Archive.Work, being the conduit to this show. When you trail back to the source, you see all of that richness there, and generosity, and community gathering, and community support and empowerment. So it really is, a beautiful extension of, what Paul saw and developed, and something that we are all a part of and it love to be. So.
I want to be conscious of time, because even though like conversations are good. Well, one thing I want to just ask Paul and all of you is just, it's a very simple question. Like, if anyone wants to visit Queer.Archive.Work, what are the availabilities of the public to visit the space at this point?
Yeah.
Open hours?
Oh, that's great. Yeah. And actually someone's also asking in our Q&A to talk a little bit more about the work as a group, and about our work, Queer.Archive.Work's work, and how this show fits into your larger project. So accessing our space, you're asking about. So we have an amazing 2,200 square foot studio in Providence, Rhode Island. We share it with Bench Press. We moved in together this past summer. We have 8 of us who are organizers. We have 15 artist residents, and we have 17 members. Nafis has been a resident and a member. And so that's 50 people who are sharing this studio space where we've got 4 risograph machines and this incredible screen printing setup.
It's beautiful.
Really
I haven't been there
one.
yet.
And the library.
Store, it's a beautiful aspect.
Big garage door opening up to the street, so we have this like really interesting relationship with the public and with, you know, just the neighborhood. I have a huge guillotine. We have digital printers as well. We don't really have much money, so you know, all of this has been like scrapped together, and I say that really like focus on the word scrapped as an experiment, but I would say every one of those 50 people right now is heavily invested in taking care of this space, the work that's in the space. We have a small collection, a library, the archive, if you will. It's not an official archive, of about 1,000, you know, books and zines and objects that are in the space. It's a beautiful thing. It's a place for people to come together. Opportunities for the public to come in. We are going to start back up again now that we're a little bit, the COVID numbers are much better now here in Rhode Island. March 20th, we're going to start our every other Sunday open library hours from 12 to 3 on Sundays, where we open the studio up to the public. If the weather's nice, we'll open the garage door. You can walk in, just like browse, rest, read, chat with folks in the library space. Usually we have donuts, and we're hoping to start a whole spring series of workshops soon. And the Queer and Trained
I want to do one.
Yeah, the Queer and
I have
Trained.
I have an idea for one, actually. So I'll talk to you about that if you'll let me.
And there's the website. Yeah. Yes, please. Yes. And we're planning the Queer and Trans Zine Fest for the second time.
Oh, cool.
Relaunching that this summer. Yeah.
Well, y'all,
it's 8:03.
It's 8:03. It's been wonderful. Also, one last thing I want to note, on Queer.Archive.Work's website, there's a bunch of publications you can view and so much content there, and you can learn about so many amazing artists like Nafis, who's in their studio at Vermont Studio Center right now with some of their work in the background, so you can learn about everyone's practice. But thank you so much, and thank you, Megan and International Print Center New York, for this opportunity and for your kindness. And I think we're out. We're done.
Thank you, B.
Oh yeah,
thanks,
no.
And thanks,
and
Megan.
everybody for showing up.
Thank you all for your super thoughtful conversation, and of course, again, your work on the show. A reminder again, you can see Unfinished at IPCNY through March 26th. As you saw briefly, there is the 3D scan of the exhibition if you're not able to make it or just want to look at it that way. And we have some upcoming, this is our second of 4 events for the exhibition. So this Saturday, I will be leading an in-person tour of the show. And then we have a live artist conversation with exhibiting artists Shannon Finnegan, Benjamin Merritt, and Terry Schubach Gordon online on Tuesday, March 15th at 7 p.m. So we hope that you will join us for those. Details at ipcny.org/public programs or always on our Instagram. And I think that's about it. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Log off. I wanted to share one more thing with you all. Just so the New York Times this week, I got invited to design the Sunday Review graphic for that. So get your hands on a copy of the New York Times this week. So it's this article about what it takes to transition. So it's going to be a really great article. I can't wait to read it. They just sent me a copy. But anyway, it'll just be featuring my typographic work. But it will be like 11 by 17 inches. So it's like so big. So get a copy of the New York Times if you want to see some GenderFail in the New York Times. Ah! I just wanted to share that. Okay. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Good night.
Hi, everybody.